Good afternoon. My name is Jelani Barr. And today, I would like to formally announce my candidacy for Lieutenant Governor. Why, you might ask, will I run for such a position? Well, let me give you just a few of the many reasons as to why I would attempt such a feat. Educationally, we are the dumbest state. Economically, we are the poorest state. Politically, we are the most corrupt state. Medically, we are the unhealthiest and fattest state, the most incarcerated state, the most sexually transmitted disease state, the most teen impregnated state, and the list goes on and on. We are at the bottom of the barrel in most, if not all, categories, and the Mississippi Delta itself is under the bottom of that barrel. We are at the top of every bad list and at the bottom of every good list. Make no mistake about it, the problems that plague this state are a direct and most significant result of insufficient quality of leadership. The well-being of this once great state falls to the responsibility of those who are elected by the masses to lead. The masses cannot bear the bulk of the blame for the position in which the state is in, when they are only following the men and women put in place to lead. Our so-called leadership has led us from once being a giant of agriculture, distribution, and commerce, to now being the laughingstock of the entire nation. Right. So when you ask me why Lieutenant Governor, I say because it is essentially the most powerful position in the state. And in order to make change, one must possess the power to make change. Change does not take forever. Change can be expedient. Most elected officials would have you believe that change takes time. In most cases, this is an illusion given to the public as pacification, to keep them from asking questions and applying pressure. When leadership is effective, change can be immediate, swift, and beneficial to all, not just a few. For as many problems as were aforementioned, I have solutions for said problems as outlined in my platforms. However, time will not permit for me to address all the issues, but I will address the most critical. First, I will address the problem with our tumultuous educational system. The entire State Board of Education should be disbanded, along with the Senate Committee of Education. These individuals haven't the slightest idea of how to properly educate our children. Each child is a case-by-case basis, so to adopt a method that demands every child be taught and dealt with in the same manner is nothing short of moronic. Common Core and the state accreditation system have to be done away with immediately. Teachers should be given the freedom and trust with minimal administrative guidance or involvement to teach as needed. An A rating in the dumbest state in the country doesn't say much nationally for your district. We should model our accreditation systems after the nation's leading educational programs and work like hell to ensure our students achieve top ratings. Reading and comprehension should be mandatory for all students. No child should leave elementary school without having the complete ability to do so. By any means necessary should this be achieved, whether it be through extended and extensive after-school hours of extracurricular reading training for students, or full-day curriculums geared towards reading and comprehension alone, where if a child can read and comprehend, then all other subjects are of no consequence to them, no matter their learning abilities. Salaries for no administrator should exceed a 5-figure mark, as to make room for new starting salaries of no less than $50,000 per year for teachers. Teachers bear the bulk of responsibility when it comes to educating children, and they should be paid as such. Public education is not a get-rich profession. It is a duty and a service profession. If you want to get rich, then I suggest that you get a career in the private sector or start your own business. Local school boards have too much power and no one to check or balance them on the local level. School boards should answer directly to the taxpayers. New recall reform is needed to give taxpayers more control over the school district their taxes fund. Second, all statewide and local elected officials should have term limits of no more than 3 to 4 terms. If they cannot get the job done in 12 to 16 years, then it is time to allow someone else to try. The career politician has ruined this state through prevention of change, coupled with the denial of allowance and allocation of new ideas, which keeps us abreast with the forever progressing society around us. This is the people's position. This is not a career, nor does it belong to one individual. The longer a person is allowed to stay in office, the greater chance of complacency and corruption taking root. All elected officials and public employees should be held accountable for the job they are doing or not doing. The institution of accountability hearings for all elected or appointed officials and employees will determine whether said person will remain in that position, depending upon the outcome of the hearing and the guidelines set to the accommodations of the people, will ensure that the duties are performed for which they were elected or appointed to perform. Thirdly, Mississippi needs to get back to its bread and butter, get back to the industry which made us a great state at one period in history. Agriculture was and is the lifeblood of Mississippi. Since we no longer possess the world market on cotton, we must adapt. Archaic laws should be repealed that prevent industrial cultivation of hemp and marijuana. Hemp itself is a multifunctional crop that can be used in production of thousands of products, ranging from clothing to building materials, food, and even fuel. Marijuana has proven to have extensive medical capabilities for multiple diseases, illnesses, and even physical impairments. Most citizens have to spend a fortune on different types of medicines, and in some cases, only for one illness. These same frivolous and ridiculous laws have given way to the enslavement of the poor, those of little or no resource, and the not so wealthy. Over 80% of Mississippi's incarcerated population is nonviolent African-American marijuana offenders. Young men who go in simply petty mistake makers come out professional criminals. The repealing of this prohibition will open doors and opportunities to those who otherwise do not have such liberties. Which brings me to the last, but by no means the least, of my platform solutions: a complete and total reform of our disparaging, racist, sexist, capitalist, opportunistic, chauvinistic, imperialistic, and artistic and customistic criminal justice system. This system preys on the poor, the uneducated, the unconnected, those with no resources, and those with no wealth. It just so happens that in Mississippi, mostly and only African Americans fall victim to each and all of these categories. Our current system cares nothing for the Bill of Rights. Judges and legislators have perverted the Constitution to give law enforcement the power to disrespect and blatantly ignore a citizen's rights. In Mississippi, the aforementioned categories of people, which are mainly African American, have no rights and are treated as bottom-class citizens by law enforcement. I myself was recently victimized by law enforcement and have experienced firsthand the mistreatment of African American men and the absolute disregard of American civil rights. As far as law enforcement is concerned, people of little to no resource and of African American descent have no rights during confrontation with police. What we need is robust legislation that puts emphasis on citizens' rights and does not value the life of law enforcement over the life of a civilian. All life matters. Laws made to protect the life of only certain individuals devalue the life of other individuals. Each individual person has the right to determine what is safest and best for their own well-being, and not some politician or judge who is not even subject to the same laws in which they create and supposedly uphold. Most judges and politicians are too well connected for the law to make a difference or even mean anything to them when it comes to breaking the law. The right phone call is sufficient enough for any law enforcement officer to look the other way when dealing with well-connected people, such as judges, politicians, and fellow officers. The blue wall must be torn down with extreme prejudice. Corrupt officers are protected by would-be good officers under the code of "I'm not a rat," or "a cop never rats out another cop." These mantras have kept hidden the misconduct of law enforcement while they cower behind the veil of protecting the public or the veil of the officer's safety. What about the civilian safety? There is no safety for civilians, whether they be law-abiding or not, when it involves dealings with law enforcement. If by their discretion a civilian is wrong, they are given the power to use any means necessary to make it right in their own eyes. I will introduce legislation that promotes the Bill of Rights to the forefront of police procedure, and that will immensely and severely punish officers who stand by and do or say nothing as they watch fellow officers violate citizens' rights. taxpayer is the most important variable in the operation of government and should be treated as such, with all the respect and reverence that one would give an employer. In closing, I tell you that a simple, honest man can solve the problems of the world, and that our problems are not expensive or complicated, but simple and very inexpensive. All that is required is time and hard work, that the leadership and subordinates alike roll up their sleeves, take off their suits, robes, and uniforms, sacrifice your personal time, and devote it to getting your hands dirty while tirelessly working to fix our problems. I make a solemn promise that a vote for me is truly a vote for prosperity and proper protection and service for you, the Commonwealth. A vote to return the power to those whom it truly belongs to, you, the people. Thank you. Again, my name is Jelani Barr, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor of Mississippi.
Sir. Right. Yes. Yeah. Finally.